And we're back with another episode of What's Hockey. Keaton, the
A lot
trade
of shit.
deadline just
A
expired.
lot of
Why don't you
trades.
go why don't you go ahead and walk us through them hella trades that went through?
Well, I did do it by date, so things can get a little jumbled. Do apologize about that, but I just wanted to make sure that I knew what was happening on that day. So on the 4th, we've got Oilers receiving Trent Frederic and Max Jones. I believe both of those players were from the Bruins, unless Max was from the Devils. I don't know. But Bruins receive a second rounder in this year's draft, a fourth rounder in next year's draft, and Max Winter, a defenseman. And the New Jersey Devils retain 50% of Frederic's salary in addition to getting the rights of Shane LaChance, a
Yeah,
prospect of
and
some sort, and hope he
Boston
ends up boosting up the Devils. I don't know, man.
yeah,
But
and Boston
seems
trying
like
to
a
get
weird
draft picks is
three
going to be
team trade. But yeah, definitely Bruins are revamping their entire team.
yeah.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, they're getting a bunch of picks. So next up, we've got Panthers getting Vitek Vanacek on the 5th, a goalie from the Sharks for Patrick Giles, a forward. Subsequently, on the 6th, Panthers also acquire Nico Sturm from the Sharks, as well as a seventh rounder in 27 to exchange for a fourth rounder from next year's draft. They stay busy for another trade on the 6th with Winnipeg, exchanging Chris Driger, goalie, for Capo Kakinen, another goalie. So it looks like they're just, boosting up on their way to victory, I guess. I do know
Yeah.
that unfortunately Aaron Ekblad is suspended for 20 games, just to kind of keep it on the Panthers side of things.
And then
PEDs,
of
I don't really
course
understand exactly what happened. It sounds like he might have just, took a wrong supplement, but I mean, who knows? Could
he
be doing
says he didn't
cocaine
know
on
what
the
he took.
weekends.
He
But
says he doesn't know what he took, but that's the lamest excuse, man.
I mean,
But
hey,
yeah,
honestly, those things are pretty strict. There's a lot of players that, like, if they just go to Walmart and get like an off-brand something, they might get positive for this, that, or the other for no reason. It's
dog, you know how
possible.
many players are in the
I'm
league?
not
Like, and
saying
this is
that
the
it
first
happens
one that
all
we've
the time.
heard in a
I'm just
while.
saying that it's possible. But anyway,
Uh, yeah.
either way.
Either
So yeah,
way,
I mean, they just want to, stay busy, keep active. They're just out a few players for the time being, but
put
they've already
Chuck
got a
on
pretty sure spot as
LTIR.
far as playoffs is concerned. Next up, we've got Penguins trading Michael Bunting to Nashville and Vincent Descharnay to San Jose. So the Sharks do get a bit of talent, but it seems like they've also kind of gutted their team a little bit. Predators give up Luke Shin and Tommy Novak for this process. So Penguins also receive a fourth rounder in 26 to Nashville and receive a fifth rounder in 28. Um,
Yeah,
Next up on the 5th, we've got Red Wings getting involved in a three-team trade as the Lightning received Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gord. Yanni Gord ends up being initially traded to the Red Wings and subsequently traded to Tampa Bay after retaining 50% of the salary through that process. Detroit does receive a conditional fourth rounder in this year's draft, so, obviously Eiserman is just kind of looking to the future, but we'll get to that later. Seattle does receive Michael Essemont, a forward, a conditional first rounder in both 26 and 27, and a second rounder in this year's draft. So they're getting quite a bit as far as capital is concerned in this upcoming draft the next
yeah,
few
and
years.
Yanni
So
Gord, of course, adding depth to Tampa Bay. They're obviously making a run for it, and then
yeah, for sure.
the Kraken. They are obviously not going anywhere, so you might as well acquire what you can at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too happy about the Red Wings retaining some other players' cap, but whatever. We get a pick out of it, so I guess that's all right. We've got on the 6th, Brian Dumoulin was traded to the Devils, and in return, the Ducks receive a prospect in Herman Traff, as well as a second rounder in this year's draft. He's in the final year of a 2-year deal signed with the Kraken and has been at least with 3 teams through that 2 years. So kind of sucks. I mean, he's 33 years old, but basically a rental at this point.
Well, and you have the
So
injury with Luke Hughes as well, so I mean, you kind of need some
yeah,
depth there as
he
well.
it's Jack Hughes, by the way, but he's
Jack Hughes,
definitely out
sorry.
this season. Brothers. But yeah, as speculated, not an easy injury to get over, and he's basically out for the rest of the season and probably out through most of the playoffs, if not all of them. So definitely,
Oh, I'm kind of tripping. Yeah, no, I got that wrong because the dude they acquired is actually a defenseman, so he wouldn't be replacing Jack Hughes there. But they did later on bring in a forward, which I'm sure
yeah,
you'll
they
get
did
to.
a
But
lot of trades. This is just on
yeah,
the
yeah,
6th, and the
yeah, for sure.
deadline is on the 7th. So.
Yeah,
A few things going on a few days. We've got Riley Smith traded back to the Vegas Knights for a prospect in Brendan Brisson and San Jose's third rounder in this year's draft. Another veteran player, basically another rental for Vegas. So they just, hold on to that process. That was also on
yeah.
the 6th. Uh, another trade on the 6th. We've got Rangers adding Carson Soucy from Vancouver in exchange for a third rounder in this year's draft. So, seems kind of a weird thing. I know the Rangers are just out of the playoffs, but, it seems like they actually want to go into the playoffs as opposed to the Red Wings not wanting to. So, yeah. Uh, Vancouver getting a third rounder in this year's draft, hopefully they can kind of rebuild around whatever they've lost throughout
And it's going to
what
be
they've
San
missed.
Jose's pick, so it should be a fairly high third
Yeah.
rounder.
And with the whole JT Miller issue and everything, I mean, he's playing so much better with the Rangers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're keeping that door open, so it seems like, nobody feels ousted or, hurt by that trade as far as Vancouver versus the Rangers. But now Justin Brazeau is now at or Brazo, is now at the Wild. Bruins received Marat Kunuts, or sorry, Kusnutdinov and Jacob Lauko, as well as a sixth rounder in next year's draft. So like I mentioned, Bruins are just kind of exchanging for a bunch of future stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. Also on the 6th, pretty late in that day, we've got 98-year-old Brock Nelson heading to Colorado, along with
Colorado's
prospect
active,
William
man.
Duport. The Islanders
Yeah.
do receive Cal Ritchie, which I hear is a awesome prospect, but I don't really understand any of that process, to be perfectly honest. Then they also get Oliver Kylington, a defenseman, as well as a first rounder in 26th or 27. I think it just depends on some sort of thing. Uh, but yeah, huge trade for both
Something.
organizations. I mean, Colorado adding another 20-goal scorer for
Yeah.
the season. I mean, they're just stacking up on offense.
Oh,
So yeah,
100%,
I mean,
man.
they just get another player that's played with the Four Nations. I don't know how many players they already did have. I think at least three, but yeah, maybe just two. But either way, yeah. The next day, Islanders do send Oliver Kylington to Anaheim for future considerations. So um,
Who
I
knows?
guess they don't really need that guy. So, but yeah, later on, early morning on the 7th, we've got Jake Wallman heading to Edmonton. Kind of
Yep.
disappointed in this trade, but it is good for the Oilers. The D-man was playing fantastic for the Sharks. I mean, he's been playing great, and I hope he does well with the Edmonton as long as they don't win the cup.
I
But definitely
definitely
gives
hope
the
he does
Edmonton a
not do well.
huge help for the defense. I do know that, like, their lines have been probably the best since the Connor McDavid era ever started. So they seem poised to do pretty well.
Yeah, they've
San
needed
Jose
some help
does.
on
Oh,
the
sorry. Go ahead.
defensive side. Yeah, they've needed some help on the defensive side, especially,
Oh
after
yeah,
what you saw last season in the playoffs. So that's definitely
yeah,
going to
and
be a really big
they are
pickup.
pretty still top heavy as far as forwards are concerned, but they definitely help as far as the defense, and that's just completely stacked
Dude, first
at this point.
game, he goes ahead and hits a guy who you're going to get to his trade in a little bit, but Mikko Rantanen, a battle of the 96s. My God, that was a mean hit by Wallman. Impressive to say the
Yeah, I
least.
did see that. Pretty good. Pretty good. Makes me happy because he was a former Red Wing, but definitely don't like who he's playing with. But yeah, I mean, San Jose gets a conditional first rounder in 26, as well as a prospect in Carl Berglund. Um, it's kind of wild because I believe we gave up Wallman for like nothing,
Yeah,
or
from what
we
I
just didn't
understand,
re-sign
y'all
him or
had
something along
to.
those lines.
I think y'all
But we just,
packaged like a second with Wallman to get rid of him, and now he's
yeah,
being flipped
yeah.
for a
I think it was
first.
just for future considerations too. So I don't even know if that even
That's
was
horrible, man. That's
closed. It's
horrible.
just dumb because we have such a weak area on defense.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming that we just didn't want to pay him, but he's just been playing really well, and I don't know why we didn't.
A Wallman Cider
But
lineup. That would be pretty nice.
yeah, I mean, Malman with Sider, Edvinson, and Johansson. I mean, we'd be pretty stacked on two, at least two lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, regardless, later on in that day, we've got Capitals receiving Anthony Beauvillier from Pittsburgh for a second rounder in this year's draft. Seems like he's pretty good for the capital that the Capitals gave up. But yeah, I don't know that guy at all, but I know that the Capitals are pretty solid and probably could just use that. So
Yeah, it looks like he
pretty
doesn't
good
get too
trade either way.
many minutes as far as time on ice, but I mean, in the few that he is, he seems
What he
productive,
does,
and so yeah, that is definitely
yeah,
more for depth. And again, another example of a team in black and yellow just trying to retool for the future between the Penguins and the Bruins. I mean,
yeah.
if you have a contract with them, you might be gone at every deadline
I
for the
mean, the
next years.
Penguins probably will never get rid of Sidney Crosby, but outside
No,
of that, anything else
and
goes.
before the podcast, we talked about Pasternak in Boston. I think it's a real similar case there where they're not going to
I mean,
go unless
honestly,
they
I
like
thought it would
ask to
have
be
been
gone.
Marchand as well, but we'll get to that a little bit later
Sure,
as
sure.
well.
Yeah.
But also on the 7th, we got Ottawa Senators receiving Dylan Cousins and Dennis Gilbert, as well as a second rounder in 26. And in return, the Sabres received Josh Norris, a forward, as well as Jacob Bernard Docker, a defenseman. Also, Ottawa also requires Fabian Zetterlund from the Sharks, as well as Tristan Robbins, along with a fourth rounder in this year's draft from San Jose in exchange for Zach Ostapchuk, as well as Noah Gregor, along with a second rounder in this year's draft. So,
That was a
pretty
lot.
good swaparoo, and Ottawa has just stacked up. I mean, Zetterlund's been playing really well, as well as Dylan Cousins. I know they played really well against the Red Wings last night. So, I mean, yeah,
And this continues to
Senators
trend
seem
with
to be pushing for
Buffalo.
that playoff spot for sure.
Yeah, and so I listened to a few podcasts talking about some of the trades, and they were essentially saying that this is what Buffalo's done over the last few years, just getting rid of young, talented players for whatever reason. And essentially, it was phrased that the next person that probably needs to go there is the GM. So yeah, I don't know what the hell Buffalo's doing.
Yeah, no idea, but they are definitely retooling and getting out of the playoff spot. But give me one second. I actually didn't realize. I guess he's a flyer, or rather a previous
You're
flyer.
good. I knew there were a
But
lot
yeah,
of
we've got,
trades, but there's
yeah,
so
there's a
many that
bunch
were.
of stuff. The LA Kings do receive Andre Kuzmenko and a seventh rounder in this year's draft for a third rounder in the 27 draft. I don't know where he came from. Oh, the Flyers. There we go.
Flyers, and before
So yeah,
that,
he
he
was
was
with the
with
Flyers, so the
Vancouver,
Kings
I
and
think.
Flyers make that trade. Next up, we got Jets acquiring, I misspelled it, Luke Shen from Pittsburgh and a second rounder in 26 and a fourth in 27. Kind of crazy because I believe Luke Shen was traded from the Predators to Pittsburgh. So I guess they didn't really want him. They just wanted draft capital.
And Shen's a good
But
pickup for the Jets, I think, too. So
Oh yeah, for sure. I
yeah,
believe he's a defenseman. I didn't put it in my notes, but he's been playing really well. And I was hearing some commenters saying that the Red Wings should go for him if we were able to do so. But I don't think Yzerman's willing to give up any sort of capital and kind of likes what his team looks like currently, at least, which
yeah,
honestly doesn't make any sense, but whatever. They also receive Brandon Tanev from Seattle for a second rounder in
yep.
27. So the Jets just, adding depth again
Oh,
and just kind of
I
bolstering
feel
for
like
that
we've
playoff
said
run.
it for a few teams, but again, another team that's going for it, man. Like I felt like
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players, or rather teams that are going for it, getting those just big names, or rather just depth players, and just retooling for that playoff run. Because I know, I mean, a lot of people are banged and battered as of right now, and they're only going to
sure.
get worse throughout the playoffs. So, just having that depth is always nice.
And it,
We've
it
got
felt
Red
like
Wings
a
acquiring
super
Peter. Oh, go ahead.
aggressive. Oh, go ahead. No, I was just reiterating what you're saying and just saying how aggressive it felt that like Colorado was, of course, Dallas, which we're getting to,
Yeah.
but the Winnipeg Jets, which you mentioned, Florida Panthers, like it feels like it's going to be a hard hitting, insane playoff run for each one of these teams because my God, I mean the Leafs
I
got
think
better.
every team that's in the top three of their division is getting depth in any way, shape, or form.
And it felt like
Um,
this year. I know in the
except
past
for the
years
Kings. The
that
Kings didn't do anything like last year.
uh, yeah, just
I
getting
guess outside of
Kuzmenko.
getting Kuzmenko, but yeah, they didn't
Yeah,
really do anything.
yeah. It just felt like this year had bigger splashes than last year. And
Oh, for
so
sure.
like it makes sense. Like if you're not going to re-sign a player, go ahead and get a few picks for him, and then pawn him off to a team that's going to the playoffs. But my goodness,
Yeah,
I feel like while we knew these teams were good and going to be contenders, it still feels like the landscape has shifted in more ways than one with these teams acquired, and you're going to get to bigger trades in a second, but just massive shifts.
yeah, it's crazy. We've got Red Wings acquiring Peter Mrazek, one of the worst goalies in existence, along with Craig Smith from the Blackhawks for Joe Veleno.
Mm,
Pretty average trade, if not below average, in my opinion. I can only assume it's just cap it slash roster space for our prospects slash draft picks or whatever, but I don't know, man. We did last night kick Alex Lyon down on the roster spot, and Mrazek was the backup for Talbot, but
mm,
whatever.
yeah,
Next up, we got Luke Kunin or Kunin, I don't know, is headed to the Blue Jackets for a fourth rounder in this year's draft. The former Shark will look to add to a seeming playoff contender. We've got Maple Leafs acquiring Scott Lofton and a fourth rounder in this year's draft, as well as a sixth rounder in 27 from Philadelphia in exchange for Nikita Gravenkin, as well as a first rounder in the 27 draft. The Leafs also acquire Brandon Carlo from Boston in exchange for
yeah.
Fraser Minton and a first rounder in 26 and a fourth rounder in this year's draft.
Pretty big
They
pickup
also
there.
acquire Reese Johnson from Minnesota for future considerations. So, you know, as we've mentioned, Maple Leafs are also just getting that shit done. We got New Jersey Devils receiving Dennis Cholowski, I don't know, from the Islanders for Adam Beckman. And the Devils stayed really busy that day, acquiring Cody Glass and John Gruden from the Penguins for Chase Stillman and Max Graham, along with a third rounder in the 27th draft. They
Yeah,
also continue with Seattle acquiring Daniel Sprong for a seventh rounder in the 26th draft. And their final trade was through Boston, exchanging Daniel Musial, I don't know, for Mark McLaughlin. Um, Staying busy. They got a lot of
yeah,
forward
extremely so.
help to help with. the aforementioned Jack Hughes injury. So yeah, another team. I mean, I think they're third in their division currently. So I mean, they just want to hold that spot and continue with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Rangers acquire Nicholas Aube-Kubel. I don't know, man.
I don't know
The
how to say
forward from the
that.
Sabres for Eric Brandstrom. Average trade, I guess.
Yeah.
Colorado stays busy with a couple trades on the 7th. We've got Eric Johnson from Philly going to Colorado for Giovanni Smith and Charlie Coyle, and a fifth rounder for Casey Middlestat, William Zellers, and a second rounder in this year's draft.
Dude, bringing
So
in Coyle
Boston getting
and
rid of
Brock Nelson,
Coyle.
that's gonna help
Yeah.
so much. Not having to rely on just Makar, Lekanen,
And McCoy's a
and
defenseman, but
McKinnon.
yeah.
And then they also bring in
Well,
Eric
they got
Johnson,
Arturi
which
Lehkonen, and then I think don't they have another guy? Nichushkin,
they got
isn't he still there?
Arturi Lekanen.
That's what
Did
I
you say
just
that?
said. Arturi
My fault.
Lehkonen.
They got a few guys on that team. They got a full
Yeah,
roster.
at least nine.
Yeah, Eric
But
Johnson,
yeah,
former Colorado Ave. He's a veteran player, so they know what he brings. So outside of helping their offensive lines, they go ahead and get a stable veteran on the defensive side too.
yeah, another rental for this year's playoff run. Next up, we've got Stars receiving Mikko Rantanen and
Yes,
immediately
sir.
signing him to a crazy deal, 8 years, 12 million average per year. And the Canes received Logan Stankoven, a first and third rounder in both 26 and 27. And the Stars just pull pull something out of their ass. I
I
honestly didn't
was
know that
very
they could do
surprised.
that and would do that, and it seems like they're also going for the cup. So
I remember telling you
they got a
last week on the podcast, I wasn't expecting too big of a move given that we've given up first in the last few years. And then we go ahead and make the biggest move at the deadline, bringing in Ranson. It was just insane. And I know as far as the contract goes, when he was in Colorado, I think he was asking for like 14 when he was
yeah.
in.
They offered him 12.5 million on average, I believe, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. They might have even upped it to 13, but he was firm with a 14 million on average. But I
Yeah,
think it might have been the case of just the 8 year aspect. I mean, he could have been offered a less time or shorter contract for
sure.
more money on average. So that would have made sense. But overall, I mean, through 8 years, 12 million on average, that'll add up a little bit
Oh, yeah.
more
No,
than
yeah. I mean, it's a
a
big
4 year,
contract.
14 million average.
It's definitely a big
So,
contract, but knowing that you got him for cheaper than what he was asking for in other
oh
places,
yeah.
you did. I mean,
And even the
that's
Carolina Canes tried to sign him, or I don't think they wanted to really, but they offered him a contract, but he declined it because it wasn't
well. I
up to his
think, man, if
standards.
you make that trade, I think you're assuming that he's going to sign with you. I don't think they did their due diligence there,
Yeah,
giving
it
away.
was a big flop on their end. A lot of people, I think it was, oh, who was it? His old teammate was saying like they should have known they would have, or rather should have signed him immediately, or rather that he wanted to sign with a team like right away, but
Yeah,
they didn't
yeah,
want
one hundred
to,
percent.
and just kind of fumbled that. And I believe it was 13 games, maybe 16, something like
It
that,
wasn't
less than
much.
20.
Yeah,
But he did rent the jersey number from a teammate for a
yeah,
Rolex.
he
So
did,
that guy
and that
definitely
teammate now
won.
has he's got his number
I
back
forgot
and the
who he was. I
Rolex.
definitely suck at that. But I was reading something. Yeah, he got a Rolex for the jersey number for 13, 16 games. So
Yeah.
pretty nice gift.
And on the other end of that trade, Logan Stankoven, good prospect, scores the game winner in his first game with Carolina, and they do get plenty of draft capital. It will likely be later in the draft, in the round, in each round, the first and the third round. But still, I don't think it's. I think it's a pretty solid trade considering you weren't going to keep Ranson in anyway. So at least you got
Yeah.
a future player, you got picks. So it kind of worked out for them.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people speculating that the Stars basically now have one of the best top nine forwards in the league, or at
Dude,
least in the cap
it's
era, which is kind of even crazier. But yeah, I mean, they've
It's
looking
sick,
pretty
man.
well. I mean, as long as their defense can hold up, I know Haskinen's still
That's
out,
the
but
issue. Like I
that's
really
kind
would
of
have
the
liked
biggest
us to
issue right
bring
now.
in one more defenseman. We weren't able to do that, but
And
yeah, I mean on
probably
the
a cap
offensive side,
space
it's
issue, you know?
some of that definitely came into play, but I don't know. I
Because
just
they
don't
did
think we were
sign,
able to get
re-sign William Johnston just to kind of get that out of the way. 5 year, $8 million a year
who?
contract, something like that. Johnston?
Oh, Wyatt Johnston. Yeah, yeah, we
I
got
think I
him
said William, my
five.
bad.
You're good. 5 years, 8 mil on average per year. Man, that to me is such a good move. He's one of the
That's crazy
brightest
because they were
young
able to do
players in the
that
league.
and sign Rantanen. So, I mean, yeah, they're just pulling shit out of their ass. It's crazy.
Yeah, so and funny enough, so I know Jamie Ben's up for a contract, but he straight up told Jim Nill, sign everyone else first. Like we'll take care of mine in the off season, but let's get this team as good as we can
He's
possibly
older
be.
too, so he
He is,
probably doesn't
but
really care as much.
no, no, well, there's like a loyalty there with Jamie Benn in the front
Yeah,
office where they want
well, that's
him to be
more
a
what I
part of a
mean.
championship winning team. And so, like, if he wanted the contract, I think he would have got it done. But I mean, he unselfishly said, "No, get the best roster you can, and we'll worry about that when the
It's
time
pretty
comes."
selfless.
So, yeah, I would say so.
Next up, we got the Blackhawks getting Aku Rati and Shea Weber and Victor Soderstrom from the Utah Hockey Club for a fifth rounder in 26. Honestly, a pretty huge haul for the Blackhawks for just a pick,
For just a
a
six,
fifth
yeah,
rounder in next year's draft. I mean, that kind of sounds like it's nothing to me. They
yeah,
get three
for sure.
players out of it, and might have just been cap
Well,
slash
I think they
roster
get
space
two. I
for
think
a
it's just
hockey
Shea
player.
Weber's contract.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe
I
they
think so.
traded him. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But either way, um, next up we got Brad Marchand going to Florida. Rat going to the Rats for a conditional second
Ugh.
rounder in 27. Honestly, that seems kind of like a cheap trade for the Boston Bruins to accept. But I mean, the Panthers are now the most rat scumbag team. They got Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, and Matthew Kachuk. That's just gross.
We'll see if
But yeah,
Marchand wants to fight his teammates. They do have some beef there.
oh yeah, I saw some quote that he says Sam Bennett's still a scumbag, but I mean, I would say it takes one to know one. So yeah,
Exactly.
it seems like in the past few years, honestly, the Panthers have dismantled the Bruins organization. They ruined their playoff hopes 2 years in a row. Completely just obliterated their team and then just stole I would assume one of their most loyal teammates. I don't know, man. Kind of crazy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
either way,
absolutely, man.
uh, crazy trade in addition to the Rantanen. Next up, we got Pittsburgh going out to get Connor Timmins and Connor Dewaar from Toronto for a fifth rounder in this year's draft. Um, Pretty good, I guess. We got Boston acquiring Henry Jokiharju, uh, or Jokiharju. I don't know. He's a defenseman from the Sabres, and they in turn receive a fourth rounder in the 26th draft.
Yeah,
We've got Carolina acquiring Mark Jankowski from Nashville for a fifth rounder in the 26th draft. I believe in his debut, he did play pretty well. So, pretty good on
hmm.
him.
Solid.
Solid, yeah. We've got, I think that might be it for all the trades. That's crazy.
I can't imagine
Um,
there's any more left. That was so many.
We did go through quite a bit. There have been a few re-signings. We got Jake Evans signing a 4-year deal worth $11.4 million on average with the Canadiens. 28-year-old center looks to just continue to keep the uh, Canadiens' hopes alive. Pretty solid this season. He was on the last year of his 3-year contract, so would have been a free agent anyway. So signs a pretty solid contract for a pretty solid center for what could be a playoff contender, but I don't think they're going to make it.
Yeah,
But we've got Matthew Olivier signing a 6-year, $18 million contract, total contract, per year. That would be crazy. Through the 2030-2031 season. Kind of weird to think about. But Blue Jackets are high on him, and he seems to contribute a lot of hits. If you could
Oh
see
yeah,
last week's Prize Picks bet,
yeah, for sure.
did pretty well. We also have uh, Carol Vejmelka or Vemelka. I heard it both ways, but I'm pretty sure it's Vemelka. He signs a 5-year deal with the Utah to remain with the hockey club for the foreseeable future. He's 28, so seems to be a pretty pivotal player for their franchise, at least throughout their hopeful name change. So yeah, pretty solid. Um, We've got uh, Colton Parayko has been injured and now will be out for 6 weeks. He was injured in
Mm,
their
that's
3-2
rough.
shootout win against the Kings last Wednesday. Huge loss for the Blues as they attempt to reestablish a playoff run, but it seems unlikely. I know they are tied with the uh, Canucks, I believe, but they have two more games played than the other teams near them. So I don't think they're going to make it, but they could. Who knows? Um, then we've got uh, some more news somewhere. Oh no,
Is it
I scroll
another?
through all the
What you
bullshit
got?
again. I'm trying to find it. I know we skipped over a few things, so I'm trying to find. Nice. All right. We're back to it. And we've got Evander Kane is now out for the year with having
Ooh,
knee/hip surgery and will remain on long-term IR for at least the remainder of the regular season. Most
mm,
likely through the playoffs, but it depends on how deep their playoff run will be.
that's rough, man.
Granted, we did talk about the Oilers boosting up, and I believe he is still with the Oilers. At least I
I
hope so. But either way,
I think. Let me confirm.
definitely would, keep their playoff hopes alive if he does end up coming back. I think he's like 33 though, so I mean he's definitely a veteran up there, and definitely could potentially may not be the same player after the injury. So who knows?
I was
But
about to
yeah,
ask, do we know what the injury is? But they never tell you anything, just either
It's
upper
knee
or lower
slash hip
body.
surgery. I don't
Oh,
really know
okay,
exactly
okay,
what it is. I think it's like a hip adductor thing or something. I don't know.
got you.
No
Fair
idea,
enough.
bro. But it's some sort of knee slash hip surgery, definitely lower body. But
Eee.
like I mentioned, up there in age and having a pretty, what I would say, major surgery for what you use pretty much at all points when you play.
Yeah,
But
unless he's the
yeah,
Russian machine, that's gonna take a toll on you.
yeah, yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, again, like I mentioned, Aaron Ekblad has been suspended for 20 games, so
Mm,
that'll bleed into the playoffs at least for the second game or the third game rather of their initial bout, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the playoffs, we now have less than 20 games to be played for each
Oh
team outside of the
shoot.
Kings. They have 20 exactly. Seems like the top three of each division has solidified, like we mentioned, and we can see the Panthers, Maple Leafs, Lightning, Capitals, Devils, Hurricanes, Stars, Jets, Avalanche, Oilers, Golden Knights, and the Kings most likely going for the playoffs and will solidify their top three spots in each division. The wild card spots do look a little iffy for some teams, but I feel like the Eastern Conference won't have the Red Wings in the playoffs. Who knows? But we'll see. It
Yeah,
does look
there's
like
some progress
Senators,
to be
Wild,
made there.
Flames, and Columbus Blue Jackets look like the most poised for those wild card spots. I'm not really sure. It could be the Rangers coming in. I don't know. It could be the Blues, Canucks, Utah Rangers, or Canadians, but I honestly don't really think the uh, hockey club or the Blues will make it. And the Canucks just
Uh,
seem like a weird team this year, so I don't really know that they're gonna make it. Does
they
seem
could
kind of iffy
challenge the
for all of
Flames
them.
there. I definitely don't see, like
I
you
mean, yeah,
said, Blues
they're
or
they're right there. It's not like it's not. anybody's game.
Sure,
It's not
sure.
set in stone for sure,
Yeah,
but yeah, pretty pretty tough on either end as far as the Western and Eastern conferences, much like, or not much like last year, where it was like the Western was completely solidified, and then
yeah.
the Eastern was just like a big question mark. And the Islanders just squeaked into the playoffs last year. That was crazy. But yeah, either way, it doesn't seem like they're gonna make it this year. That's for sure. But
I
yeah,
mean, they're what, like they're 5 points out with the same amount of games
I
played
don't
as
have it pulled up.
Columbus. I got it pulled up. I mean, they're technically still in it. I don't
I
imagine
mean, there's a lot of teams that are in it,
trading
man.
away
But
Brock
yeah, it
Nelson
just
helps
doesn't.
you, but
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look likely.
yeah,
Especially with three teams ahead of them with 1 point. But yeah, like I mentioned, the Red Wings probably aren't going to make it. We're on a 6 game losing streak, which sucks. We
dude,
lost
that's real
wild
rough.
card one spot within a week, and we are probably not going to see the playoffs after that. On the flip side, the Panthers and Avalanche are both on a 6 game winning streak, pretty hot teams to beat at this point. Um, Capitals and Jets are both, I think, still tied with 80 or 92 points. Yeah. So they're the top teams of the league. I think Washington has one less game played. Yes. And yeah, looking pretty crazy. We've got Nathan McKinnon getting the first to 100 points on the season. He's got, I
Yep.
believe, 102 now. Pretty crazy tip in by Arturi Lekkinen last night. Um, yeah, pretty crazy. He also gets his 1,000th point through that process as well. So his career is looking mighty nice.
Yeah.
We've got
That's gonna be a dangerous
uh,
team come playoff time, man.
oh yeah, it's crazy. And then we've got Draisaitl just quietly being the top goal scorer. I think he also has the top power play goals as well. He's got 43 or 46, I can't remember, but either way, he's most likely going to be the first to 50 goals and probably will be the only 50 plus goal scorer of the year. I mean, it's going to be a tough. I think the last person is 36, and it's going to be tough to get 14 goals in just under 20 games.
Yeah,
Depends on who you're with, I guess. But yeah, kind of crazy. Ovechkin is only 9 goals away from beating Gretzky this season.
it's possible, man.
So I mean, he could do it, and I believe he might still be able to beat Gretzky's goal record in less games played. Definitely never going to touch his point record, but
Sure.
either way, that's
I did
crazy.
not think when the season started and you told me that it was possible for him to catch up, I did
I think it's
not foresee the
42
season
goals.
he's at.
It's not like a huge ass,
I mean,
but
we
I
just
mean,
talked
he's
about touching
39.
50. There's only one guy in the league you feel like he's going to get 50, and then
Well,
42 is,
now,
yeah, but I'm just
yeah,
saying,
just
like,
imagine if Ovechkin didn't get injured, man. That's crazy.
oh, I know. Yeah, yeah, that's insane to think about.
But yeah, crazy. I would assume that probably Draisaitl might be the Hart Trophy winner. I believe that's the MVP. Connor McDavid is very quiet year for having 79 points. I believe he's -3 for plus minus. Kind of crazy because I mean he's a solid player and plays a lot of minutes, and they're not a bad team, but he's on the
No,
negative side right now.
I,
So
I,
I mean he's just having a down year, and his down year is still 79 points on the season. So I mean
we're
he's
gonna
playing
get
great
to
regardless, but
yeah, we're gonna get to the games that our teams played in the last week. In that week, we played Edmonton, and while you're right, I feel like McDavid hasn't been talked about as much, especially outside of the Four Nations tournament. Just disgusting, like a
well, I
nightmare
mean
to
I
play
think
against.
outside of the last game in the Four Nations tournament, he didn't really play much. I don't know.
I, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure he did.
Maybe I had bad memory, but I know he contributed a lot on the last game, but I don't think he played a lot. I think it was mostly McKinnon.
There was a lot of
That's
McKinnon, yeah. And my memory is pretty trash, and then
either
compound it
way.
with being along with weather. But
It
yeah,
does
anyway,
look like Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry is looking like the clear favorite for the Jack Adams Award, which is the coach of the year. They held some sort of voting process. I believe it's just NHL heads, not anybody like official, but he
sure,
seemed to have gotten the most votes from all the, stat heads. I will say Todd McClellan did get one vote. He got 1 point, but definitely not in the
mm,
talks of Coach of the
too
Year
little,
this
too
year.
late.
Yeah, definitely too little. I mean, he had a great stretch of what, like
Yeah,
20 games, but yeah, either way. Yeah, we'll move on to the Red Wings
sure.
just because we played 3 games. Oh no, 4, sorry. And we lost all 4. Like I
Oh
mentioned, we're on
God,
a
man.
6-game losing streak. Definitely was not any of our best games. We played okay against the Hurricanes. We only let up 2 goals, and unfortunately, the 2-0 deficit into I believe that was the first period. It might have just been the first and the second period, but it was only 2-0 by third period, and we didn't let up any more goals. It wasn't that bad, but we ended up only scoring one just to cover that spread, and it was just a tough game to watch. We couldn't get anything going, and yeah, don't know what was going on. Definitely played a lot better than we did against the Blue Jackets, but still kind of just subpar. Against the hockey club, we played a pretty good first period, but it all seems to fall apart in the third period. It's either we come back in the third period and, stand strong, or we let it all go in the third period.
That's
Um,
tough, man.
and like the first and second period are solid. So we seem to take the days off or periods off. Um, we did get a crazy goal by Dylan Larkin against Utah. He basically dove and shot it into the net as he fell down. Pretty crazy. Um, always nice, but they did end up winning 4-2, so sucks. We did play the Capitals, playing back to back since the hockey club and then the Capitals. Um, it was a rough one. We got out to a 2-0 early lead, and it was 2-0, I believe, or 2-1 by the third period, and we end up losing 5-2. Pretty awful. Didn't even get an empty netter either. They just scored 5 unanswered. We got up to a 2-0 lead and then just squandered it.
Mm,
Pretty annoying. And Alex Ovechkin didn't even score a point. So I think they were talking about him getting his 1600th against us, and he did not manage to do so. So that was the only player that we locked down. But I believe Alexei Protas was just nonsensical. I think he had like 3 goals or 2 goals and 3 points, something like that. Pretty good. But yeah, just a bad game. Against the Senators last night, definitely pretty sluggish in the first period, like I mentioned. But we got scored on against, I believe his name is David Perron, an ex-Red Wing, and I think everything just kind of switched. We ended up outshooting the Senators like 3-2 or 3-1 rather. Pretty crazy. We had 49 shots on goal against Linus Ullmark, and he just stood on his head. It was ridiculous. Um, 49, and he stopped every single one but one. We only scored one that whole game. And unfortunately, if the game was zero point 0.5 seconds longer, we would have tied it. But it was not. And we did not. So yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, we played a great third period, but we just couldn't we just couldn't manage. And Allmark just saved everything. We had many scoring chances, so many fucking scoring chances, but just nothing came through. But yeah, up next we play the Sabres on Wednesday, Hurricanes at Hurricanes on Friday, the Golden Knights on Sunday, and if we don't record on Tuesday, at Capitals on that Tuesday coming up. I believe we'll most likely go 1-3 if we're counting all three or four of those games. Yeah, pretty bad. I think the only win we'll get is against the Sabres, and they're awful. So if we manage to lose to them, there's no hopes for our playoff chances. We do take a rough schedule, but I mean, if we manage to get 2 wins, we could still potentially be in the talks, but I still don't think that we're going to make the playoffs this year. And that'll
Jeez,
be a
man.
9-year streak for the Detroit Red Wings not making the playoffs.
That's so rough,
At least
man.
we're not the Sabres.
The amount of work that y'all put in to even get back in the picture since New Year's Day, like y'all started so well
I
this
mean,
half of the year,
Derek
and
Lalonde was doing nothing with the team, and then Todd
yeah,
McClellan put a fire under our ass, and then I guess everyone just lost it. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
that
they
new
just seem
coach
pretty
boost.
clueless outside of like 4 players, it feels like. I don't know. It just seems like Mo Sider is always going to be playing his heart out. Lucas Raymond's always pretty solid. Dylan Larkin did take a few games off for the last few weeks, but I mean, he's been playing pretty solid as of late. Um, but yeah, I don't get it, man. We've got a pretty solid team. It just doesn't seem like anything really manages. I know Tarasenko's been a just major disappointment this year. I was kind of hoping that we might have been able to trade him and get someone else, or, I don't know, maybe some future considerations, because honestly, we need to get something going. But yeah, hopefully we can get something going.
Yeesh, man. That's pretty tough. On the other side of things, the Dallas Stars played 4 games. I don't remember exactly what I predicted for the 4 games, but we went ahead
Uh,
and went 3-1. We started by hosting the Devils and the Flames, which, funny enough, the Devil resides in the Flames, right? All right. Anyway, my brain's not working right now, but that first
okay.
game against the Devils, it was kind of frustrating because we're up 3-1 in the third period with like 10 minutes to go, and Casey DeSmith played a really good game that day, but they scored
He
two
probably
goals
did.
within 3 minutes to tie it up, and it wasn't until 5 seconds left in the game Thomas Harley scores a game-winning buzzer beater, and so we take that one at home, which I'm glad we won that one, of course, but it should not have been that tight towards the end. Our defense
They weren't
kind
able to
of
cover
gave it
the
up at the
spread,
end.
man.
No, we were not able to cover the spread. And then we go forward to the game against the Flames. I will say so. Thursday, I was at a UNT game, so I didn't see it live. But from what I understand, Flames jump out to a 2-0 lead. And we got to play catch up there. We score a goal a few minutes after their second. Wyatt Johnson scores. And then in the third period, Jason Robertson scores. Finally, in OT, Jason Robertson hits the game winner with who is it? I'm sorry, Rope Hintz getting the assist there, and Rope got the assist earlier. So I think I mentioned it before, or when talking about Rantanen, but adding him to a line with Robertson and Wyatt Johnson is. Or I'm sorry. Wyatt's with Jamie. Robertson and Rope Hintz is insane, man. Unfortunately, in the first game, we had them three together. We go down to the Oilers, and we had an injury, and I'm blanking on the injury, but essentially Rantanen starts doing double shifts, and he ends up scoring his first goal on that second shift. But I don't know how common it is. Again, we're
Was it a
not
power play? Or,
his first goal was not a power play. He assisted on a power
uh,
play. That was the goal by Wyatt, I believe. I
that's
should
cool.
have it pulled up, and I don't. Um, but no, that being
You
said,
don't be on that shit.
I really enjoyed while the first the first half of that game, 70% of that game was atrocious. Going into the third period, I think we were down 5-1, or maybe in the third period they made it 5-1. But we scored three
Yeah, the goal was a
goals.
power play goal against Edmonton.
Was it a power play? Okay.
Yeah,
But yeah,
with
so
Cheeseman and Harley on the assist.
got you. And it was a great pass, and Rantanen's bro. I don't think I've seen a shot come off a stick so fast. It was absurd, actually. I I hated that we were down so early. McDavid got a goal. Hyman had a breakaway. He scored a goal. Hyman had two goals actually, and really defensively we were not having a good game. And then I think Ottinger, I believe he was in for that game. I don't think he had a great game either. And so, I mean, yeah, down 5-1. We do score three quick to make it 5-4, but we're unable to tie it up. But I did like seeing at the end of the game, we go empty net. We got six skaters on the ice, and Rantanen is behind Skinner, behind Skinner's net, and he's directing all the traffic. This is his first game. He's pulling double shifts, and he's guiding everyone on where to be. Unfortunately, the puck doesn't go in the net. There was a save or two by Skinner that were pretty good. And so, again, we can't tie it. But what I saw from Rantanen, aside from kind of getting killed by Wallman, and I forgot which star it was, but they go to like push Wallman, but it was kind of a weak push. They didn't really protect him as much as they could have.
Was he a
But
good player?
he's big, dude. But yeah, no, Rantanen, I loved his controlling of the puck and of the offense. He seemed like smooth, and I don't want to say slow, that's not the right word, but just patient, finding the right pass. He was precise with, again,
Saving it.
passes, shots, everything. And I really loved to see that. His second game, of course, the Stars go ahead and play the Canucks. That was a very slow game. Casey DeSmith, again, man, like I'm really happy we have him as a backup this year. He had a great game again. I think it was Vancouver who might have gotten on the board first.
It wasn't
In the
us.
second period. Okay, God, my memory is awful right now. And again, I'm
Young
sick, so
Snow
I got
scored the
some
first
fog
goal.
brain. But I believe the first goal wasn't until like the middle of the second period. It was kind
It
of
was 5 minutes into the second period, and then they answered about midway through
okay, yeah. So it was a uneventful first half of the game, essentially. But that being said,
first period.
first period, yeah. But that being said, the Stars, I mean, look, I think that I really wanted defensemen at the deadline as well. But as far as what Rantanen's brought to the offense, I mean, there's a reason you pay him that much money, but to see it, to see his control of pace, it's been spectacular. I think it's going to benefit us so
Well, it's also
much.
nice to not be disappointed in that signing as well.
Oh, I agree, and I know it's long term. I believe he's 28, so I mean there might
Yeah.
be a lean year or two at the end, but that's fine. And there's a no trade clause, I believe. But that being said, again, my
You
God,
can
what a
always waive it,
difference!
right?
Sorry,
I believe players can always waive that, right?
I assume so, but yeah, no, I think
Nice.
he's been above and beyond what even I expected. I remember when he went from Colorado to Carolina, the success that he had there was far and few between. He just didn't mesh well with that system. But in our system, I mean, he's looked stupendous to me. Again, I do think we should have
It could
protected him a
also
little.
be just disgruntlement. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't really like
Sure,
Carolina.
yeah, well, and there's definitely some of that. And then I was hearing some guys on the DLLS Stars podcast talk about that Stankoven's kind of a really good fit for their system. Ransonen's not. They're kind of a little more rigid with what they require, whereas Ransonen has some
Oh,
freedom to be a little creative in our system. And it was evident in both games. He scores in both games. The last one was an empty netter to make it 4-1. But hey, I'll take it, man. Start that point streak early as soon as he gets here. So going forward,
yeah.
I think we have disgustingly good lines. Disgusting. And I know Sagan, we're still waiting for him to get back. But yeah, between the addition of him, locking down Wyatt long term, I just think that your front three lines are, as you mentioned, some of the best in the entire league. And then I love the fourth line too. When there's some rotation going on, but Steele, Beck, Colin Blackwell. I mean, they hit, they play hard, they don't. I love their
Who's
effort
that
that they
other
give,
dude?
and so yeah, I just hope the defensive end
All right.
stands. Oh, I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
I said, who's that other dude?
Which one?
Maverick Bork or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, Maverick Bork, man. I love what he. So I think he's on. They kind of move him around, But I forgot who he was with last game, but yeah, another good young player. He was also one of the guys talked about as a potential trade target for other teams if we were to acquire another player. And hell, if we, I don't want to give up Bork because I like the young talent, but
Right.
and especially for a rental. But if we were to pair Bork and like a third for a good defenseman, I think that would make this team unstoppable. But I like Bork. But yeah, man,
Nice,
I think
dude.
this. Yeah, so again, the four games. Yeah, Edmonton got the best of us, but I can't foresee us playing as bad as we did for that portion of the game where they really took over, and so I feel very confident going forward, regardless of that. Keaton, we're gonna have to go through this a little quick, but we go through the spreads every week. Last week, you got the better of me, I believe. I had it written.
Always.
You went 7-3, and I went 5-5. Current standings are you are 69-58, and I am 58-69.
Nice.
Yes. We're
Nice.
gonna go ahead and start with the Panthers and the Bruins. Bruins plus 1.5 at home. Who you got?
Definitely going to take the Panthers in that one. The aforementioned dismantling of said Bruins
Yeah, that's a
just
pretty
doesn't
easy
seem
one
like
there. Columbus and the Devils. Devils are -1.5 at home. Who are you taking there?
I'm going to take the Blue Jackets in this one. I know the Devils have retooled and look pretty nice, but so do the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I can. I will concur with that. Ottawa and Philadelphia in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is +1.5. Who do you got there?
I'm taking the Senators. The Flyers are just not good.
I concur. I don't like that I'm agreeing with you for everything. I want to gain some ground, but yeah, that's pretty easy for me.
Yeah,
Vegas
yeah, we're
Golden
gonna
Knights,
green ground.
they're traveling to Pittsburgh, taking on the Penguins. Penguins are +1.5. I have a feeling I know who you're going with there.
Taking the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yep, clean sweep in that one. I think also as these already weak teams have given up their good players,
Sounds
it's
like
kind
they
of
are
easy for
giving
this.
up for the
Yeah,
season. So
Tampa Bay and Carolina in Carolina. Spread in that one is -1.5 to the Hurricanes. Who are you going with there?
I'm gonna take the Lightning in this one against the spread.
All right, I am. Yeah, Lightning +1.5. I'll go ahead and say that that one comes through. Again, don't like that we're green on everything. The Avalanche and the Wild in Minnesota. It's Wild +1.5. Who are you taking there?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to take the Avalanche as much as I like that +1.5 for the Wild.
Yeah, I'm going with the Wild. I do like that +1.5. Avalanche could win it by one, but yeah, that half is going to help. Rangers and the Jets in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is -1.5. Who are you taking there?
I'm taking the Jets in this one. I think the Rangers might give a pretty good fight, but they're not gonna overcome.
Yep. Yeah. Damn. I wanted to gain some ground. We're not doing it.
Like the Rangers, man.
Montreal and the Canucks in Vancouver. Spreading that one is Vancouver -1.5. Who are you taking there?
I'm gonna take the Canadians in that one,
Oh,
at
are
least
you?
against the spread.
All right. I had written down Vancouver. I thought that was a given. I'll go with Vancouver on my end, -1.5 at home.
Nice, dude. They're both out
Capitals
of the
and the
playoffs currently.
Ducks. Capitals and Ducks in Anaheim. It's Anaheim +1.5. Who are you taking there?
It'll be an interesting game, I believe, but I'm gonna roll with the Capitals in this one. I think that they're gonna get an empty netter to win, or rather ensure the victory.
That Ovechkin empty netter is so deadly in these spreads, and yeah, I'm going with the Capitals as well for that reason. The Islanders and the Kings spread in that one in LA. Spread in that one is -1.5 to the Kings. Who are you taking there?
I'm taking the Kings. The Islanders got rid of Brock Nelson. I don't know who else they might have.
Noah Dobson.
Who's that?
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I'm going with the Kings as well. And lastly, the Preds and the Sharks in San Jose. It's Sharks +1.5. Who are you taking there?
Ooh, I'm gonna take the Sharks in that
All right. I think without Wallman and a few other their folk, I'm going to go with the Preds on the road
Just
minus
a
one and a
plus one and a
half.
half that I like.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Should be a pretty good one there. Keaton, again, we got to kind of go through this a little quickly, but prize picks bets. I'll be honest, I don't remember who I placed last week, but I know it did not hit because they are trash. So not even going to worry about
Okay.
looking it up. This week, I'm going to go with uh, Sam Carrick to get over 1.5 hits and Dylan Cousins to go over 1.5 shots on goal.
Well, last week I did go one and a half. Sider did not cover his end, but Matthew Olivier got enough hits, that's for sure. So definitely a good re-signing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He gets a lot of hits, man. So again, I'm gonna take his hits this week above 3.5 hits, and I'm gonna go with Brady Tkachuk with less than 3.5 hits because they just came off of a game against the Red Wings where he played, I would assume, his ass off. And they're only playing the Flyers.
He had
So I
hella
don't think
hits
he's
last
going to
night,
come out
didn't he?
hitting. So yeah, I think he's going to get less than 3.5 hits.
Yep.
But
All
yeah,
right.
quite a lot of stuff to talk about and what we have talked about. But yeah, a lot of trades happening, and we're gonna bunker down for the playoffs in the next few games.
So much, man. So much happened this last week. But yep. Uh, Join us going forward. We're going to go ahead and get more playoff talk going. Keaton talked about awards and all this stuff going on. So it's about to get even more intense. But for as for today, I think that'll end our podcast. Keaton, is there anything that I am forgetting?
On a lot of stuff, but not about the podcast. We
Fair
should be
enough.
good to go, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care. Peace.